Okay, so for the next 1 hour, we're going to have a conversation, and then there'll be a half-hour break during which Rinpoche will be happy to sign your books if you want. And then at 3:45 or so, I'll come back and be with you till 5:30. Okay, so that'll be a long session. And let me say a few words and then engage with you. What we are hopefully beginning to understand is that consciousness is the only reality. That's all there is. And it modifies itself into experience. And we've already said that all experience is sense, perceptions, sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. But consciousness is infinite. So it modifies itself into all knowers, all modes of knowing, and all things known. So right now, you're sitting there, and there's a knower. And that knower is perceiving this experience. So that's a mode of knowing. And what is being known is everything. You know your body, you know this room, you know this environment, you know us. All this is happening in consciousness. Okay, so consciousness is all knowers, all modes of knowing, and all things known. We can reframe that and say it's all observers, all modes of observation, and all objects observed. And furthermore, we can go a little deeper and say this is true of all knowers, all modes of knowing, and all things known in every species of consciousness. So what we call other organisms, living organisms, whether it's a giraffe or a dolphin or an insect, they are, in this deeper understanding, they're all sentient beings, and they have their own modes of knowing, and there's a knower there. You know, you look at a caterpillar, there's a knower there, there's a mode of knowing, and there's an experience happening. So consciousness being infinite, it's all knowers, all modes of knowing, all things known in every sentient being. But the ground of all that, the ground of all existence is pure consciousness, which is differentiating itself into all these almost infinite experiences. So what we call this body-mind, and the experience of this body-mind, which means Deepak's body-mind, is one mode of knowing. There's a knower, there's a mode of knowing, and the experience I'm having right now. But if we trace back all these, there's one infinite consciousness. And it dreams itself into experience. It dreams itself into experience. So what you're experiencing right now is a waking dream. And by the way, when I do my session tonight, or later this afternoon, we go even deeper into how the dream progresses along the journey of evolution of consciousness. But this present experience is a dream in a lucid, vivid now. Everything that's a second, a microsecond before this, a microsecond after this, or even by the time my words reach you, is already changed. The only invariant in all these experiences is the witnessing awareness. Okay? So every day, we go through this cycle of what we call the waking state, the dream state at night, and then the deep sleep state. And they're just different frequencies of activity of consciousness. So right now, this is a particular frequency of consciousness. And at night, when we dream, it's a different frequency of consciousness. And when we are in deep sleep, then all the excitations of consciousness is gone. So we are now resting in the deep sleep in pure consciousness. Pure consciousness means we have no subject-object split. We are closest to the original consciousness. Okay, so deep sleep is a window to our source. Just like meditation and all the things you're learning are windows, including the three beautiful phrases that you use: stillness of the body, and then silence of speech, and the spaciousness of the mind or heart. Same thing. Okay, those are beautiful techniques for going into fundamental reality. So, my first question to you is, and now that we've had a little bit of introduction, with everyone's permission, we can go a little deeper down the rabbit hole. Okay, what is death?
Well, according to Tibetan tradition, according to the Buddhist tradition, death is defined as a separation of our body and mind. When they separate, and it's defined as a death. So this is just one simple way of defining something, but in ultimate sense of the teaching, there is no death. So we say true realization is to realize about eternal body. Eternal body, eternal self, and the self, the body, which is beyond change, birth, and death. So in ordinary sense, so then there is this separation of our body and our consciousness. We call it death, and we have some problem with it, right?
So, to rephrase that a little bit, your body is a particular excitation of consciousness that stops. That particular excitation of consciousness stops. So the program, we call it a qualia program, okay? The qualities of consciousness that we are having right now, those qualities cease as the program finishes that particular karmic program. But as you said, mind is relatively non-local and consciousness is completely non-local. Not being in space or time, it is not subject to birth or death. What is subject to birth or death is experience, that particular program of experience. And so everything that you're experiencing right now, this moment, is pure consciousness projecting this reality through the filter of karma, or you said karmic traces, which is a very beautiful word, karmic traces. So every thought, every feeling, every sensation, every perception that we are having, each one is a unique expression, and their experience is being filtered through these karmic traces. In this particular lucid dream, we'll go into the bardos in a moment. But even that, as it is happening, we use the word in the Vedanta that this is the prison of the conditioned mind, right?
Sure.
And our ultimate goal is to be free of it. But there's a further elaboration in your tradition of how most people identify with the painful experiences of life, the suffering. So how do we start to loosen the pain body in order to move to upgrading the dream, so to speak?
Sure.
And can you address that?
Sure. So generally, like the process of the death, we call it dissolution of element, the cessation of the element. So we say earth, water, fire, air, and space. So from the gross to subtle. When we die, from the gross to the subtle sequence. So basically, in the moment when we are dying, this body, like a aspect of the earth, and then which is related with the spleen and the water, kidney, and each organs are associated with specific elements. So they start to decline, and in the end, the wind element, the lung and the breath, it stops and it goes into the heart. So, and then they say there's the 3 drops of the blood in the heart, and that is kind of way of talking about a very detailed way of how the body and mind separates. So that's the idea of the practice is very much like what we were doing earlier. Practice, like basically you're trying to dissolve your finding some sense of more clear space in you, and then you're trying to dissolve your identity. That we were talking about the job, for example, very strong sense of I related with the job is suffering. It's kind of, it's caught up with the whole situation. So what you're really trying to do, that sense of I, you're letting it go, you're letting it die, you're trying to rediscover a new sense of I, new being who feels strong, indestructible by connecting to the source. So that is the idea, is during the daytime when we are meditating the way we meditated again and again and again, in the moment of the death, you feel less fear of dying because you feel you don't identify so much with the death or change or feeling of something you are losing. You're just losing your body. That's not you. You're losing some sense of I. That's not who you are. So in some sense, whole question is how this, like a dream and sleep and meditation, help in the process of dying, overcoming fear. I think that's kind of one way to look at it.
Okay, and to expand on that. So, right now, if we went through this exercise, if I asked you, what's this? It's a microphone. What's this? It's a hand. What's this? It's a body. That's a construct you have built on the raw experience of sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts, which are constantly shifting. So when you say, I am my body, then if you look at that a little bit, you'll see that that's an assumption that has no basis, because there's no such thing as a fixed body, right? A fertilized ovum, embryo, a baby, a younger toddler, teenager, this, older body. So there is no such thing as a fixed body. It's a moving experience in consciousness of sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. So the first thing that happens at death is first the construct dissolves, right? Mm-hmm. And then the earth element starts to kind of dissolve. Mm-hmm. And with that, the earth element, we talk about smell. Mm-hmm. So the sense of smell starts to dissolve. And then progressively, water element, taste goes away. And then the fire element, so sight starts to dissolve. There, these things become very kind of amorphous, colors, shapes, forms, all merging with each other. and then gradually sound starts to dissolve, and finally thought starts to dissolve, and what is left is consciousness, right? So what is left is the original state, but with the traces of karma.
Sure.
Okay? So it is the seeds of those karma that then recycle, right? So you have the same concept of reincarnation, but try and understand this logically. Reincarnation is happening all the time, right? Your stomach cells die every 5 days, but they remember how to make hydrochloric acid. Okay, so the memory is there. The memory is incarnating as those stomach cells. Your skin cells die every month, but they know the difference between pleasure, pain, hardness, softness, etc. So the memory is always outliving the form it is assuming. And what we call karmic traces are memories of experiences that we are attached to. And unfortunately, we get more easily attached to painful memories. The job becomes my identity, or this toxic relationship becomes my identity. And so most people, that is the cause of all suffering, is to isolate yourself as an ego that's kind of imprisoned in a body which has a span of a lifetime, but squeezed into this volume and attached to painful experiences. But as you were saying, that people remember painful experiences and identify with them, but they don't usually, when they have a joyful experience or an experience of unbounded awareness, they kind of doubt if it's real, but they never doubt their painful experiences. Is that right? So how do we get out of this bound?
Yeah, people ask, when they're having beautiful experience, then say, is it real? When they're having painful experience, they say, this is real. I think, this topic about the death and this dissolutions of the element, in some sense, how does this will help for all of us this moment, to understanding these principles, and is that we are so attached to a reality that we have created, and we feel that these realities should last forever, because reason why we want them to last forever, because we want it to last forever. I want it to last forever. So, and that's my problem. So then when it comes to the sense of I, who is this, it's really just experiences or roles or conditions that I identify with. And living life like that, which is really, there's more conflict, more pain, more problems there than feeling more free or more possibility. That's what's happening. So the idea of the death is similar, that if like meditation, what we did this morning is just, if you're able to do this at least 5 times a day, and if you do it in a relationship, what is challenging you, naturally your ability to connect to yourself more and less to the circumstances, conditions, particularly weakness and pain, becomes less and less. And then when you face changes, you will not be threatened so much. When you face losses, you won't be threatening so much. When you come to your own life, transition of your life, you feel it's okay, because that's not me. So there's some sense of this sense of yourself becomes a much more higher, more beyond things. I think that's the kind of really like the purpose of what I think the discussion here.
So you're not consciously detaching from a painful experience. Just remember that. You're not consciously detaching from a painful experience. You're actually expanding the light of awareness. When you say still body, and just the thought of that. Still body, okay. Silence, listening to silence. Spaciousness. Whatever you were attached to is overwhelmed by the light of awareness. So it loses its hold on you. Am I making sense? You're not fighting the darkness, you're bringing in the light of awareness. So the whole little thing that was your identity, my job, this particular relationship, this money, attachment to the body that was young and vital and full brimming with youth, that starts to not have the same hold on you the more you expand your awareness. So now on a practical level, this is what I'd like to suggest. What he taught us is very simple, right? You can stop any moment during the day. Not a big deal, 5 times a day. Stillness in body, okay? Spaciousness and silence in mind. But if you add to that what I suggested to you yesterday, the recapitulation of the day, and you say, it's already a dream. I can't hold on to it. Let it go. And then you start to say, I'm going to witness my dream, which, by the way, what the technique Rinpoche taught us just now is a beautiful way to actually seed your consciousness to the solution of any problem. Any problem. So not only do you bring that person that you have maybe a toxic relationship with, but you could bring a toxic situation, a toxic environment, and you practice this, and in the night you kind of have a dissolution of that particular attachment to the pain body. But gradually, wouldn't you be able to do that in the waking state too? Because as there is this merging of wakefulness, dream state, and deep sleep.
Yeah, so what we were saying earlier, it's in principle, of course, one's supposed to be integrating every moment, but in reality, sometimes it's difficult, right? So this is what I was saying, informal practice 5 times a day, how you choose 5 times a day. Because somebody chooses you. Your problem chooses you. You don't want to choose a problem. Your problem comes and knocks at your door. You say, I'm here. How you want to handle me? With anger or with space? So you're given option. In that very moment, you have a chance to completely go crazy, which often we do, or you have a chance to say, I have an option here. It's hard, so I need to focus on my body. It's hard, so I need to focus on my breath. You step back to your body, speech, and mind, because body, speech, and mind is for weaker people, is the exit from the self. For stronger people, is the entrance to the self. So you want to exit, you want to enter. And the situation gives you 2 options. So, of course, in some sense, you say, I want to enter. So you, again, go back to the practice. And when you go back to the practice, you find a new space, new silence, new awareness inside. And that moment, you wanted to look at the same situation as we did in the practice. You want to look at the same situation, but you will see something different in the same situation. If you're living with somebody for 30 years, and if you're having issue with your husband or wife, and finally, if you work like that, one day you will say, I have a brand new husband now, a brand new wife, and you fall in love again, because all these years you have seen somebody through these stories, you're finally able to take a break, and you're able to see someone who someone is. And that is a very awakening, enlightening, and that only happens when you have a glimpse of that experience of yourself. When you find yourself more clearly, you're clearly able to see others also, same way.
Not to burden everybody with more and more techniques, but you're here, so I guess you signed up for it. How many people have heard of the practice? What Rinpoche taught us is a form of yoga nidra also. But has anyone heard of Yoga Nidra? Okay. So here's one other practice. Now, after a while, this all becomes pretty automatic. The recapitulation, what Rinpoche is saying, you could do at night before you go, you prepare half an hour or whatever. But here's something what you can do, which is I've done it for many years. You sit up in bed after you've done your recapitulation and what Rinpoche taught us. You can actually go through this process of death every night. Okay, you've already let go of the day's dream. You've practiced what he told you. Then what you do is the following. You progressively detach from perception. So this is what I do, and it's a very well-known practice of Yoga Nidra. There are many others. I sit in bed with the... By the way, if you want a good sleep, room should be as dark as possible. There should be no electronics in the room. There should be no, as much as possible, sound. It should be silent. And as much as possible, you should have eaten much earlier, say 2 hours, 3 hours before you go to sleep. So your stomach is, your digestive process is already over. And you're preparing for the night, which is entry into the bardo, the dream state, and then into the deep sleep state, which is death, which is no subject-object split. Okay. So what you could do, what I do, is in the darkness, I first look around, and all I see is shapes and forms. Don't try to label these shapes and forms. That's a lamp, that's a flower, that's a painting. It's already dark, so you just see shapes and forms. Then you turn that off. How do you turn that off? You close your eyes. Okay, so that particular perception is gone. Then, because you haven't eaten for 2-3 hours, the sense of smell and taste is quiescent anyway. Right? So what's left? You've turned off the visual perception. Sense of smell and taste is in absence right now. What's left? Hearing and sensation and thought. Okay, that's all that's left. So now you shift to sound. In my case, because my room is usually silent, but I can still hear a faint sound of maybe the air conditioner or some little noise. Okay, so you put your attention on that for a bit without labeling it. Sound. Then how do you shut it off? You shut it off by feeling your body, sensations. You feel your body from the inside out. You also feel your body touching the bed. That's a sensation. There's no judgment, there's no labeling, there's nothing of the sort. It's just feeling that all the sensations that are happening. Then you shut that off. And how do you shut that off? By focusing on your breath. And breath is also a sensation. Okay, so you focus on the breath. And at this moment, if you've had a good, fulfilling day, your mind should be relatively quiet. But now, what you do is, as you focus on the breath, you also lie down and stay with the breath. And then you just tell yourself that I'm going to take my attention from the breath and I'm going to rest in infinite awareness. I'm going to rest is infinite being, because that's what sleep is, deep sleep. And the dream state before the deep sleep is the bardo, right? So I'm going to rest in infinite awareness. And then slowly you will see, and I'll discuss this more later today when we have our thing, that the light of awareness will be there even in deep sleep. The light of awareness will be there, and there will be an automatic knowing that I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm the light of awareness in which the body and mind is a perpetual, ceaseless, intermittent activity. So we've gone through the waking dream, we've gone through the dream, and now we are in infinite awareness in deep sleep. So with this as the introduction, what does the word bardo actually mean? Are we right now in a bardo?
So literally in Tibetan, it's a Tibetan word, bardo means intermediate state.
So the bardo means intermediate state.
So that means in between something. So we are always in between something. So like when we say moment you are born until you get sick, which will lead you to the death, it's called life bardo. So that's your duration of your life. Moment you get sick until you die, that's called near death bardo. That's intermediate state, those moments. After you stop breathing, and then you go, the dissolution of all the elements, 5 elements. When that happens, then you go into this deep kind of sleep state. And that's called clear light bardo. So which is the sleep yoga practice, it's more associated to that. So if you're able to work with the sleep well, then in the moment of the death, because it's very difficult to be conscious in sleep. It's easier to be conscious in a dream. It's very difficult to be aware when you have no thoughts. It's easier to be aware when there is experiences. So if you don't recognize that, then the last bardo is called bardo of existence, in which vision comes, you don't recognize it, then dualities start, a formation starts. Then the identity, new identity. So sometimes people will have a dream about being different than, if you're a man, you might dream sometime being a woman or something. So in the bardo, they say experience happens same. You start to feel your previous life, whoever you were. Then you also feel like somebody who you're not, who you're becoming. You begin to feel somebody who you're becoming. That's like a transition.
Many people are saying this is just, you're imagining the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And the point is, right now what's happening, you have imagined before. Okay, imagination precedes, the dream precedes this experience, right?
Yeah.
So it's okay if you think this is happening in imagination, but this is how consciousness creates. Consciousness imagines, it conceives, it constructs, it governs, and it becomes what it imagined. Okay.
Yeah, experience is a little bit like this. For example, after lunch, right now everybody's like, that's called the earth experience. But of course, good thing is we are not always like this 24 hours, right? You're not like that in the morning. In the morning you're like that. So that's a space hour. So that's why people say meditation are good to do in the morning, because you do better in this during the hour of space, because 12 hours are divided into different time zone, element zones. So of course, when situations are like this, when you're earth, then you want to do the earth practice. You don't go against the element, you will go with the element. So then it's a good time to take a nap.
Now, we know from our experience, a good rest, a good night's sleep, you feel very joyful. There's a kind of you feel high a little bit. That freshness is there. So death and resurrection and freshness go together. Okay, deep sleep is when you are totally refreshed because you've gone back to being, right? Before the subject-object split. And therefore, the night practice is very important, and getting those 8 hours of the dream state and the deep sleep are very important for you to feel fresh in the body. And when you say earth experience, you also mean, you divided this practice three things, right?
Yeah, generally, like when you are feeling like very grounded, just the way you're feeling right now, that's like a more earth, moment of earth, like so. We are, in our tradition, we, like in the morning, in the evening. So there's a different practices in a way for different period, even though same practice, but when you apply it, its experiences are different. So each experiences are, in some sense, you are valuing them, right? For example, right now, you would, instead of thinking, oh, I'm not very clear, I'm sleepy, oh, why I'm sleepy, I need a coffee, this and that, instead of going like that, you enjoy it. You're not going to have this experience in the morning, right? In the morning, you'll be like this. So you don't want to have this experience in the morning. In the evening, you don't want to have a morning experience. So every moment of experiences of element, whatever happens, there is a value, a richness, like entrance to the same source through different doors. That's the kind of idea.
So consciousness cannot help having an experience. Consciousness cannot help being conscious of an experience. Consciousness, therefore, is constantly recycling. Now, in the Tibetan tradition again, there are many bardos, right? Mm-hmm. So, almost infinite bardos, which is exactly what the Yoga Vishishta says. And the Yoga Vishishta says, in the infinite consciousness, there are infinite universes that come and go as experience, like little motes of dust in a beam of light. The light is the light of consciousness, and each of us is recycling or cycling through a particular bardo, depending on the stage of our evolution. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there are many bardos.
Yeah, there are many bardos, yes.
Okay, I think I'm going to stop here, and you guys should ask questions now. Please, and you can ask any question you want.
Consciousness coming into form, that's us prior. Who was I before I was born, right? I choose this, I enter. In the case of abortion, I'm just curious, what, if anything, does that mean? I get pregnant, I have an abortion, but that's consciousness coming inside of me, and I, as a human form, terminate that opportunity for consciousness to evolve. It's just one of those questions I was like curious. What
yeah, it's a very difficult topic because we've all been, in a sense, programmed into viewing that, you know how politically charged that.
That's why I asked it.
Yeah. So
I have more.
Here's one other way to interpret that. One way is that you made the choice for the abortion. And the other is that incarnated being decided this is not the right place to go to.
Okay. Hang on, it just escaped me because I was really curious about that one. There's another one.
The being itself is not in time. The being is not in time. The essential being is never born and never dies. What is born is a particular sequence of experiences that are being born and dying all the time. So, in a way, incarnation is the incarnation of memories and constructs and desires and imagination. The karmic wheel is karma, memory, desire. So another way to interpret what you said is that I mentioned, I think the other day, that we now know that the embryo dreams. Okay, and suddenly the dream might say, this is not the right incarnation for me.
Okay, and then the other question is, if we're all coming from the infinite source, infinite possibility, universe, pure potentiality, etc., help me understand, why would the infinite take form to, when we look at things in choice of good or bad, right or wrong, whatever, and I attempt to live in a place of no judgment. However, why would infinite form take form to be in form to, quote unquote, be negative to others, i.e. war, terrorism, etc., right? What would be the purpose of pure potential spending time in negative karmic incidents when we're coming from pure?
First of all, that question comes from a finite being, you. At this moment, are asking the question of infinite consciousness as a finite being. But the infinite being infinite expresses itself in infinite experiences, which means maximum diversity, from the extreme divine to the extreme diabolical. There is no experience in the absence of contrast. So the infinite expresses itself as the experience of a microbe, as the experience of a butterfly, as the experience of a dolphin, as the experience of a human, which, because of its intellect, asks these questions and also has the choice to either choose the forces of evolution or choose the forces of entropy and destruction. But the range of experience is infinite, for the infinite.
If anyone has another question, we have lines and mics in the aisle, so just come and line up.
Maybe I'll just say a very short thing. So according to the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, it's like the purpose of your form in this body will be, there are some sense of your connection to that infinite source is not fully awakened. Therefore, you have accumulated these karmic traces and imprints and stories. So you have these stories, but you're trying to process them in this form. So you have this particular body, particular culture you're born in, even your question that you have is a very, very particular conditional questions that you're coming up with. So it's some sense of being in this conditional sense is we're trying to, basically life is like one long session of therapy. Okay. So you are in the session right now. So hopefully it will be soon ended, and they will say, I'm done with the therapy right, altogether. So think about like a mouse, putting a mouse consciousness into the elephant consciousness, or putting an elephant consciousness into mouse consciousness will be a problem for elephant and mouse. Because if they have a consciousness of the mouse and trying to have this big body, confusing, right? So somehow the karmic traces have choose particular biological form, expressions of it, that it will able to express properly and clear all the traces and be free. So we are here, every experience that we are having a therapy session. So just think about a good, hopefully a good session.
But also the negative experiences that we are having are basically to expand our awareness.
Exactly.
And as human beings with finite minds, although our mind is such a different mind from other species, is that we can reflect on these questions. But we don't realize that it's still a finite mind. and it's very difficult for us to know the limits of what's beyond our finite mind as human beings. In philosophy, they have these two branches, ontology and epistemology. So ontology says, what is the nature of being? And the nature of being is consciousness, infinite possibilities. But epistemology says, what are the limits of our knowing with this body-mind? How can we assume that this body-mind and this neural apparatus and our conditioning allows us to go beyond our limited frameworks? And what we are doing through spiritual practice is slowly kind of loosening the conditioning. And the conditioning is very deep. It's your parents' conditioning, it's your cultural conditioning, it's the religious conditioning, the economic conditioning, the historical conditioning. So when you arrive in this world, you already arrive in a world that's interpreted for you. And the questions come from that interpreted world.
My question is about the dream state. When you were talking about dreaming earlier, I go to bed relatively early, 9:30. I sleep well. I wake up refreshed, but I never remember a dream, or rarely remember a dream. So I'm wondering, am I skipping that state in my sleep, or am I just not remembering?
No, everybody dreams. Every sentient being dreams. The practices you're learning now will actually make you more aware of your dreams. You agree?
Yes, absolutely. Even you're asking questions, even we are listening to you, tonight you're going to have it, remember your dream.
Yay!
So tonight, please try these techniques that you've learned, okay? Try the recapitulation, try the yoga nidra, try the three realms of being, the stillness in the body, the silence of speech, and the spaciousness of consciousness a little bit. See what happens, experiment. You can show those two slides, Renee. So, mind, body, brain, universes are interpretations of experience and consciousness. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But the interpretations themselves are also experiences in consciousness. The whole thing is being conceived, constructed, governed, and coming into existence based on a multiplicity of conditionings. And all these practices are just to loosen the hold of conditioning. So when you become when you let go a little bit of your habitual certainties, you start to loosen the conditioning. We all have habitual certainties, communism is bad, Trump is inflamed, the Russians are hacking, etc. And then not only that, we have more conditioning overlaid on that because there's an emotional attachment to those interpretations too. No labels, no judgments, no evaluation. Just witnessing.
Hi, my name's September. I was wondering if you could give us a quick tidbit on how to help veterans let go of their traumatic experience. I've tried to get them to do what you're saying, finish the dream, where it's the end they want. And I was wondering if you give me a couple tips how to help them go through that process. And I'm going to buy your book, so I'll know.
I think the simplest start is meditation.
Okay.
Yeah, so meditation, I will elaborate that a little bit. So idea of meditation is simply rest. Resting your body, feeling stillness, resting your speech, being aware of the silence, resting your mind, feeling that spaciousness. So basically, allowing to completely rest, environment when they can rest completely. From that restful place, which means much deeper place than their wounds, they can express the pain or whatever they have more freely. And they're accommodating those experiences. So if you're a social worker or something, then basically being there to hear it, listen it, and then they releases that session. That's the therapy what I'm talking about. When they express it out, their speech, or by feeling it, by saying something, by telling story, you're already helping.
And your presence is very important. Yeah. Not what you say, not what you tell them as therapy, not what you do. Your presence as a conscious, aware being allays their anxiety.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laurie, and this is exactly the therapy session I came here to receive. Because my daughter passed away 4 years ago, and I have just been having a worse and worse time dealing with it. And, I came here because I've listened to your some of your 21-day meditations, and I thought this is what I really needed. But the first few days, I just thought this just isn't working for me. I don't know how to do this. It's not helping me reframe it. And I guess, I'm listening to what you've been saying this morning. But it's, she wasn't just an experience. I mean, she was, but it's like, how do you get beyond that loss of that person that was supposed to grow up and have a life?
Yes, first of all, very sorry to hear that. But it's very important not to suppress grief. That you feel the grief, fully embrace it. As Rumi says, the cure of pain is in the pain. So you not only feel the grief in your body because it's a bodily, visceral feeling, but you also try to remember the most joyful part of your experience with her. That helps her release and your release. You want to say something?
Yeah. So I think, like what I feel when you're expressing your feeling that your love, your connection to her, it's alive. It's here. It's presence. It's radiating. I think in our tradition, when the teacher passed away, in the case of the teacher, we think about he left the body, but we didn't think about he left. His presence is there. Your presence of your love is there for forever and will be. So that sense of what is there, just being a little bit more conscious and aware of that than what physical lost. I know it's easy to say, but but at least.
But embrace it. Embrace the sorrow. Embrace the grief. Recall the happy moments, and feel her presence, and that'll help you.
Okay. Thank you. Hi. I have 2 questions. My first question is, why is it when some people pass, it's not peaceful? I had an aunt, one of the sweetest people you would ever want to meet in your life. And when she passed, there was a lot of fear. And I just remember her, and she was scared. And she kept saying that the devil was coming for her. And I just wonder why some people have that experience versus just going peacefully.
That's why it's important to prepare a whole lifetime. Nobody thinks, I almost thought we shouldn't talk about this today, but then I said, why not? Because most people only think about these things when they're diagnosed with cancer, or when they lose a loved one, or when they are getting old, or when they have a crisis. The Dalai Lama meditates on his death every day. Okay, as do I, by the way. I think we should all be 100% aware of the impermanence of experience, and 100% also aware of the timelessness of being. Only that will bring peace. the quality of death usually reflects the quality of life, right? Can you say anything?
So I think, like maybe talking directly your own situation, probably, like when people live their life, probably she lived her life with those kind of experiences, like feeling insecure, feeling distrust, a little bit kind of doubting people. Maybe if you're living life, big part of your life, if you're living like that, then they kind of amplifies, they become much more stronger in the moment of the death, like, so that's Deepak Ji saying that preparing like every day. And I think sometime in the West there is kind of problem with the idea of the death, like nobody ever managed to avoid it. Nobody will be. It's not a personal problem, right? But so somehow, but we think, like it's a like very negative relationship rather than embracing it, reflecting it, talking about it, preparing for it. And even in the life, there are things, difficult things, maybe, I don't know, let go of something which is difficult, your car, or I don't know, whatever it is, the little test of letting go, painful, something that you choose to let go. I don't know, there are many things you can, sometimes they will take it away anyway without you let them. So at least say, okay, thank you I was having a hard time to letting go, you helped me to let go, thank you. Appreciate those things. So I think that these are like preparations, helpful.
Letting go of the day every night is a beautiful experience. You wake up the next day with a resurrected experience of life.